Okay, I'm gonna show you a couple of clips from somebody who I have done very little in coverage on, and that's John Kasich. I saw clips this morning on Meet the Press with John Kasich and on another morning TV news show, and I have come to the conclusion that there's something wrong with John Kasich. And I honestly believe that he is delusional. He is absolutely delusional. John Kasich is running around telling everybody that he is going to win the nomination, which is in another universe crazy. John Kasich has won all of one state, which is his home state of Ohio. He was running fourth behind Marco Rubio, who dropped out of the race after he lost Florida, even though he was still in front of Kasich. The only reason that Kasich won the state of Ohio was that the Republican Party basically knew that Ohio, as in Florida, was a winner-take-all state. And they basically got behind Kasich in order to stop Trump. Now again, they got behind Rubio, but Rubio had pissed off so many people in his own state that it was basically impossible for him to win. They were trying to get behind Cruz in Florida, but that just was not going to work. But I want you to listen to John Kasich in these two clips and just realize how delusional he actually is.
The race, though, against Trump is Ohio Governor John Kasich, whose win in his home state on Tuesday did keep his hopes alive and the hopes of the anti-Trump movement alive in trying to get a contested convention. John Kasich joined me yesterday from Salt Lake City. Why are you in Utah? And I ask that because if you didn't campaign in Utah and Ted Cruz won 50% of the vote, then you deny Donald Trump any delegates, which actually helps your path to getting to Cleveland in a contested convention.
And John Kasich is too stupid to realize that. So he would rather get into Utah, and if he has any effect, which he probably will have some, in order to knock Cruz down below 50% so that he can pick up a few delegates, which are going to be meaningless to him. But he doesn't seem to understand that in this particular case, and I'm no Cruz fan, but in this particular case, it's better for Cruz to get all 50 delegates than for Cruz himself and Trump to get a split of the delegates, because any delegates going to Trump helps Trump, and this idiot is too stupid to realize it.
Chuck, look, I'm in Utah. You know why? Because I'm running for president, and because I want people to understand what is a good, positive message with a record of accomplishment.
Do you want to win?
That was the question. Do you want to win? And this idiot doesn't answer the question. He can't win doing it the way that he's doing it.
But Chuck, I'm going to compete across the country and tell people who I am and let the chips fall where they may.
Which means coming in third, which means letting Trump win. He doesn't understand that.
Let me also tell you, no one is going to that convention with enough delegates. I will have more delegates moving in there that will give me momentum, and then the delegates are going to decide who can win in the fall, because the other guys can't win in the fall. Hillary will be president. And secondly, I've got the record, the experience, and the vision and the ability to bring people together to be a good president.
How are you going to bring people together, okay, when you're too stupid to realize that if Trump continues to pick up delegates, okay, especially in winner-take-all states like Arizona, you're making it easier for him. So how is that bringing people together? You're an idiot.
Well, we saw the evidence, though, of what happens when there's 3 people in and 2 anti-Trump candidates split the vote. Missouri and Illinois, Donald Trump cleaned up on delegates. If you go about this in New York and Pennsylvania and some of these other states, you and Cruz could end up handing more delegates to Trump inadvertently.
Well, maybe Ted ought to get out because he can't win in the fall, and maybe these people that are hot on that, ought to tell them to do it. They try to tell me to get out of the race. How many times, Chuck? And now they should be thanking me for staying in, because if Trump had win Ohio, it would be over. I have a record of accomplishment, a record of bringing people together, a vision for the future of this country, and guess what? In the grassroots, people are getting it. Now,
they're taking their time getting it because your ass is not, you're not even coming in second. You're coming in third, other than in Ohio. And I think you came in second in not New Hampshire, but Vermont. I think he came in second in Vermont. But other than that, he's coming in third.
I get it because, frankly, you put me on the tube a lot. But Trump got, $1.8 billion worth of free media. I got like none.
That's true.
Not all of his free media was very positive.
People are starting to hear me, and we're starting to rise. Look at what our numbers are.
If you thought your candidacy were helping Trump, not hurting him, would you get out?
Chuck, I'm running for president.
So he doesn't answer the question.
This isn't a parlor game of who gets this or who gets that.
But you're stuck with a parlor game. I understand that, but you're stuck having to play a parlor game because your only path is the convention. How's that? That's the ultimate parlor game. I
am not playing a parlor game. The convention is an extension of the process of nominating somebody.
It's a parlor game.
I was there in '76 when Reagan challenged the sitting president. They didn't like him doing it either. But you know what? His vision, his message mattered. Listen, nobody's going to that convention with enough delegates, and at the end, you know why I'll get picked? Because I can win in the fall, and secondly, because I have the experience and the record to lead this country.
Okay. This is plain stupid bullshit, and this is ego at this point. I'm not a Republican, so let me make sure I get that out there. If Donald Trump wins the nomination, that is going to absolutely destroy the Republican Party to the point where they are going to try to run a third-party candidate against Trump and the Democratic nominee. If Kasich, some kind of way, gets the nomination, all the Trump people are going to go home, all right, and just straight out not vote because they're going to think that the nomination was stolen from them, and they would be right because this guy basically doesn't have any following as far as the people are concerned. So the only guy that doesn't blow everything up is Ted Cruz, as long as he runs a close second to Trump. Now, Ted Cruz is going to lose, don't get me wrong, but the Trump people might not be quite as mad at Ted Cruz, especially if the undecided delegates basically flock over to Cruz and they basically, are really, really close. So the two guys that really blow everything up are Trump, obviously, and John Kasich, and he's too stupid to realize that.
And Chuck, if I didn't think that, I wouldn't be running.
Yesterday, earlier in the week, you totally ruled out ever being Donald Trump's running mate.
Yeah, under no circumstances.
I understand
Are you people kidding me?
All right, what about Ted Cruz?
No, I'm not going to be anybody's. I'm running for president.
That's just as Sherman-esque with Ted Cruz as it is with Donald Trump. No chance, no how.
You know what? You folks got to get, look, you're a great guy. I like you very much. But you...
See, and just look at his body language. I mean, he's getting like really frustrated with the questions that he's being asked. And if he was smart, the smart thing for him to do in order to hold the party together would be to join Cruz and become Cruz's vice president, add their sets of delegates together in order to defeat Trump. But he's not really a party guy. He's out there for himself.
Guys, you pundits got to get out of Washington. You don't understand me. The problem is that a lot of people just can't figure that how could this guy mean what he says? How is it that he's no different than what he appears? You can't figure that out. People are like, okay, what's his calculation? What's this or that? Folks, I don't have time for that.
As you know, Ted Cruz is going to use two issues to try to wedge. If it's even a delegate fight, and that's Common Core and immigration.
Well, let me just say this. I'll tell you what its Common Core is in my state. Our State Board of Education has approved high standards, and our local school boards are the ones that devise the curriculum. We need high standards for our children in the 21st century. I am for shipping all the federal education programs out of Washington to the states. So look, I'm telling you what we do in Ohio, and at the end of the day, presidents should not run K through 12. Secondly, on immigration.
All right, he might be able to get away with the Common Core portion of it, but this is where the Republican Party absolutely splits away from him, and there's no way for him to voice this particular opinion that's coming up.
I do not believe it is practical nor doable to search in the neighborhoods and yank the people who came here illegally, who have not committed a crime since they've been here, and ship them out of this country. That is not going to happen. The plan that I support, finishing the border, making sure you have a guest worker program, and having the 11.5 million who came here illegally, who have not committed a crime, pay back taxes, pay a fine. Let me tell you, they then can have a path to legalization and not citizenship. And any other position than that just isn't going to work, Chuck.
And that's the Democratic point of view, and it's not going to sell with the Republicans.
I hate to tell you that, it ain't going to work.
You talk about yourself as a consensus builder, so I'm curious, what do you make of the Republican Senate strategy on the Supreme Court pick, Merrick Garland? Should the Senate at least hold hearings?
You know, Chuck, look, this is one I'm not going to actually answer directly because I don't think the Senate is waiting there with bated breath for my opinion.
All right, and on that note, I'm going to pause this and then pick up the other interview he did. All right, and as I indicated, here's the Face the Nation interview with John Kasich.
We spoke with him earlier. Governor, in order for you to get the nomination, you would have to win more than 100% of the remaining delegates. So how are you going to do it?
Well, first of all, nobody's going to have the delegates they need going to the convention. Everyone will fall short. And the convention, by the way, is an extension of the political process. So what will happen is people will go there with a certain number of delegates. We will go into Cleveland with momentum. And then the delegates are going to consider two things. Number one, who can win in the fall? And I'm the only one that can. That's what the polls indicate. And number two, John, a really crazy consideration, like who could actually be president of the United States? And I think when they take a look at my record, both in Washington and in Ohio, with the job growth, the wage growth, reforming the Pentagon, and then you can understand that I have the crossover appeal, I think I will be picked. So I don't think anybody's going to get there with the delegates that they need to win.
See, but what he's talking about is an undemocratic process, because he didn't even get the third most votes in the GOP primaries and caucuses. He got the fourth least amount. Trump was first, Cruz is second, Rubio was third, and this guy was fourth. So he's talking about trying to get the nomination through an undemocratic process. Jeez.
Why shouldn't the person who goes into the convention, if they don't have the majority of delegates, but if they are well ahead, why shouldn't they get the nomination?
You know what, it's like one of my daughters said, well, I had an 86 and my other friends had less than that, so I should get an A.
It's called marking on a curve. So if your daughter got the highest grade of an 86, she gets the A, and then they mark on a curve. So I guess he doesn't know math.
So we got rules, sweetie. You got to make a 90 to get an A. In other words,
Not
we got
always.
rules as to how many delegates you ought to get. And if you go in way ahead, you're likely to be picked. But what's interesting is in the 10 contested Republican conventions, you know that the leader going in only got picked 3 times?
Now he's going back into ancient history, because that, even though he is right, but he's talking about elections that occurred before the 1980. Prior to that, it occurred in like the 1800s. The situations that he's talking about.
And again, John, I have to tell you that who's going to win in the fall? Who's going to beat Hillary? These other folks can't win. They can't win Ohio, I can tell you that. But in addition, look at the resume. Look at the record. Who actually can fix this country? Who can get us moving again, both domestically and with foreign policy. So that should be a consideration now. It's not much of one, to be honest with you, but when we get to a convention, see, because I was there when Ronald Reagan actually challenged Gerald Ford. Can you imagine how many people were mad at Reagan? But his message mattered. He came close. He ultimately became one of the greatest presidents we've ever had. So, you know, the convention.
But that's after he won the conventions 4 years later. He was second in that convention against Ford, and he didn't get the nomination.
Is a very interesting thing, and delegates take things extremely seriously. Let me also tell you, John, if somebody can get the numbers, they would win. They're not going to get the numbers, so let's just everybody chill out.
Some people have suggested you should drop out so somebody can get the numbers because Ted Cruz is closer to that number than you are.
He needs 80% of the votes in order of the vote to get.
And you need like 107%, which is a mathematical impossibility.
That's not going to happen, John. You know it, and I know it.
Has anyone asked you to drop out, though?
Nobody is calling me directly and asking me to drop out. And by the way, why don't they drop out? Wait a minute, John, why don't they drop out?
They don't drop out because they got a whole lot more delegates than you do. That's why they don't drop out. And if you drop out, the likelihood is that their delegate count would go up substantially. That's why they don't drop out. And you being third man on the totem pole is just fucking it up for the Republicans. And you are too stupid to understand that, or your ego is too big to let you realize that.
The one that can win in the fall.
Bullshit.
You know another interesting thing? This party has run around for 7 years saying, how is it that we elected a one-term United States senator to be president who's never had the experience? Whatever happened to that? Remember that? So here's what I would say. I can win in the fall. They cannot.
You say you're delivering a positive message. You've stayed away from some of the back and forth. Would you not, in the pursuit of your nomination, not want the help of the Stop Trump forces, the organized efforts to stop Donald Trump?
You know, John, I am not in this for some political science game or some calculation. Let me just tell you that people are nervous about their work, their wages, their kids' future. That's what I focus on, responding to that legitimate concern that they have. And I tell them exactly how in Washington we had great success and balanced the budget and grew jobs. And I tell them about the 417,000 people who are now working in Ohio who didn't have a job when I became governor. I have people that come to my rallies and thank me for the fact that I have focused on the issue of mental illness and drug addiction. I don't have time to sit around thinking about this anti-Trump group or that group. Let me just do my job, okay? Let me just continue to communicate to the public, and we'll see where it all ends up. But I think this is a very, very constructive message to the American people, because I want you, the American people, you in your living rooms, to believe that you can change the world, and we need you to do it, because you'll revive the spirit of our country.
But Governor, the people who are trying to stop Donald Trump believe that many of the things you've just described are imperiled by his candidacy. And that gets them a little exercised in the same way you're exercised. So I'm just wondering whether you think that they're wrong, they're crazy, they've missed something?
No, let them go and do, look, you know what's interesting? Some of those very same people wanted me to get out of the race, and they wanted to get behind Rubio. What happened? Rubio's out, I'm in. Okay? If I don't win Ohio, guess what? Trump's the nominee. I want to win Ohio. Now they want me to get out? What do you... Listen, these are the same establishment people that have been fighting me my entire political career. And you know what? I'll tell you what's in my mind's eye. The people I grew up with in the Keys Rocks, the people that walked door to door for me, we had people from 22 states manning phone banks in Ohio. They came from all over the country to help because they're hopeful that together we can raise this country. I don't have time to think about all this political calculation in some back room somewhere. Okay, John? I'm just not doing it. You've known me long enough to know that what you see with me is what you get. Period. End of story.
But you have, in fact, brought on people to help you with the calculation, people with experience in previous contested. So you are, in fact, thinking about the calculation. You just don't want to talk
John,
about
look.
Exactly.
First of all, the convention is an extension of this process. Of course I want Stu Spencer. Of course I want Charlie Black. Of course I want Vin Weber. Of course I want Tom Ridge.
Of course, you want to become president based on your own ego. You're done.